A very warm welcome to all of you in another exhilarating session on 150 Minutes to English. And today we are going to learn how to decode inference. Obviously, inferential questions are something that you might have seen frequently as what can be inferred, can't be inferred, or something which has to do with general conclusion in your mocks as well as previous year question papers. And as I can see here, as well as I can assume that you do understand the importance and relevance of this one topic. So let's first talk about what exactly is an inference, how to decode it, and also solve some questions so that we can apply the knowledge that we have just gained, right? So this is me, Sukanya, and I hope you're ready. Let's get started with the first rule, and that is try to understand what is inference. In simple words, inference is reading between the lines. What does that mean? That means something which is indirectly or implicitly stated. That means something which you will have to have a detective's lens to understand. Okay, so as you can see, it's when the author doesn't say something directly, but you figure it out using the clues from the passage, plus your own reasoning. I gently refer to it as you having all the ingredients of a dish, and now it's up to you what you make out of it. Okay, so basically आपके पास सारी चीजें हैं, it's just that आपको उसका एक meaningful interpretation करना है. ठीक है, so moving to the next one, as you can see, how to spot an inference. First of all, you need to ask yourself the question, what is the question hinting at? But something which is not directly stated. And then you have to go to the text, you have to combine the clues that have been thrown at you by the writer, and you have to pick those clues efficiently and also use your common sense or experience to come to a conclusion. And that's why we also call it a reader's conclusion. An inference, in simple terms, is a reader's conclusion, what you can conclude by analyzing the indirect things given in the text. Then, avoid wild guesses. Stick to what the text suggests. When you start guessing, basically what happens is you are distracting yourself from the topic. You are digressing away from the subject matter at hand. So always remain very, very true to the text. Whatever the text is suggesting, that should be a holy grail. Then, as I've already said, think of it like detective work. A detective is not given everything on a platter, right? He basically has to pick on the clues and the cues. So the author gives you clues and you put them together to find the hidden meaning, basically making a wise choice by putting 2 plus 2 together, right? That is your inference. Now, when we talk about inferences, there are certain common traps that you need to be careful about. And these common traps, before we start with the example, तो कॉमन ट्रैप्स की अगर हम बात करते हैं तो कॉमन ट्रैप्स में सबसे पहले आता है टू एक्सट्रीम ऑप्शंस. टू एक्सट्रीम ऑप्शंस का मतलब यही है कि व्हेन यू सी एक्सट्रीम वर्ड्स लाइक एब्सोल्युटली, solely, primarily in the options, and the passage is only talking about it in casual lukewarm ways. That जैसे कि हम बोल सकते हैं कि maybe in the passage it must have been suggested that most students enjoyed the trek. Okay, whereas in the option it's written all the students enjoyed the trek. Obviously there is a sea of difference between most and all. ठीक है, तो ऐसे extreme option से you need to be extremely careful about. Then the other thing is sometimes there is, you know, an irrelevant detail mentioned in one of the options, which might be related to the topic, but again, something that you don't generally see in the passage. Basically, when you go to fact check, you might not find an evidence for it. So again, you need to be extremely careful about that as well. Other important traps, like you might get a partially true, partially false option. Again, something very similar to main idea and title, because that is the usual way to trick the students. So be extremely careful about that. And then there is a vocabulary issue. Vocabulary issue is a persistent part, and most people do not find themselves comfortable to, decode challenging vocabulary words. That could be a problem, but as long as you're good at picking up the context clues, you might be able to decipher it. Now, Let's see a very simple example. The text says the teacher walked into the class and everyone suddenly went quiet. So जो लिखा हुआ है वो तो हम clearly देख ही सकते हैं that class went quiet when the teacher entered. But what can we infer? इससे इन्फ्रेंस ये निकलता है कि क्लास को चुप इसलिए होना पड़ा बिकॉज पहले वहां पे बहुत बातें हो रही थी. दैट मीन्स इट वॉज अ नॉइजी क्लास बिफोर एंड दैट्स द रीजन एज सून as the teacher entered, out of fear the students, became really quiet. So the students were noisy before the teacher came, and that's an inference that we can derive out of this. As you can see, Arav had dark circles under his eyes. He yawned during math class, and his friend whispered, "Was fortnight worth it?" That means he must have spent all his time last night playing a video game or playing a game on his computer. Fortnite is one of those games, right? So inference is Arav stayed up late last night playing video games, right? That's an inference. Has it been written anywhere that he was playing video games? No. But the name Fortnite has been mentioned, and we can definitely conclude that it is a video game, and that's the reason he has dark circles now. Then, Neha smiled sweetly at her best friend and said, "You are my favorite person ever." And then she slowly slid the last slice of pizza onto her plate. Very sly. As you can see, Neha wants to have the last slice of pizza, and she decided to distract her best friend by giving her some compliments. तो जब आप किसी को compliment करते हो, of course, they kind of, I would say thrown off with what is in front of them. So आपने कहीं ना कहीं उसका जो attention था उसे distract कर दिया. Neha didn't want to share the pizza, so she buttered up her friend with compliments. Buttered up, makhan lagana, basically. So moving to the next one. Yes, as I was already talking about common traps. So two extreme, जो मैं तुम लोगों को पहले ही बता चुकी हूँ, wrong options often use words like always, never, all, completely, only. Now, inferences are usually mild in nature, mild या balanced. That means it will not be having extremist point of view. So always remember to find an option which is mild and balanced, not extreme. Outside knowledge trap, कभी कभी ऐसा भी होता है कि students kind of start using their existing knowledge to answer an inferential question, and that is where you make a huge blunder. So whenever you're trying to bring in your own facts and opinions, you're basically, you know, uh, digging your own grave in simple terms. So, as you can see, if it's not hinted in the passage, do not simply assume it because assumptions lead to wrong answers. And you simply have to refer back to the text at hand, not use your own existing language, existing knowledge. Then, overstating the obvious. You might find an option which keeps on repeating what's already said instead of going deeper. So it is repetitive, but it's not profound. Okay. Inference का मतलब होता है going beyond the text, not just restating it. उसको वैसे के वैसे ही बात कर देना is not really an inference. Basically going beyond the usual, but staying true to the facts given in the passage. That is an inference. Future prediction trap. Always remember that some options might be a prediction or might be a mirror to the future, but inferences, as you can see, are only about what's suggested now, not the future. So, wherever you see a prediction happening in an inferential question, that is one option to be eliminated right away. Then, irrelevant detail trap, जो मैंने पहले भी discuss किया था, option may focus on a small word or a phrase in the passage and twist it into something unrelated. इसका मतलब ये है कि something that you can find in the passage but it has been manipulated, okay, so that it can mislead you. So just because you've seen it in the passage does not make it an inference, first of all. So always check, does this connect with the main idea? And if it doesn't, then obviously it has to be ruled out, right? Now let's see some questions. I'm giving you some time to go through it. Please feel free to write your answers in the chat box. All right, let's discuss. I have intentionally taken a really short passage so that, we get the job done efficiently. So, as you can see, it's the perfect setting for a writer. As you can see, the rain is tapping very lightly on the window, and Mira is engrossed in her work. And what exactly is she doing? She's writing furiously in her notebook. Okay, now the thing is, she has undivided attention to the job at hand, and so much so that even the tea that is laid there for her, it is getting cold beside her. The dog whines. Whines means complains or makes a sound, but she's not distracted. Her pen only pauses when she runs out of paper. That means she is totally engaged, involved in whatever she's doing. She's basically writing. ठीक है? अब let's look at the question here. What can we infer about Mira? Does that mean that she did not like her dog? See, the only thing that has been mentioned here is that the dog is making a whining sound, okay, as dogs generally do. But that does not establish Mira's relationship with her dog anywhere in the passage. The relationship and interaction isn't really given. ठीक है? So this will be ruled out. She was deeply absorbed in her writing. Yes. This is something that we can infer by these statements. That means she's completely engrossed in her work. She forgot to make tea, the tea is already there. She was writing under her teacher's instruction, irrelevant detail, not present in the passage. So the correct answer is option B, and most of you have got it right. Let's see the next one. Ready? So, as we can see, the school conducted an experiment where they divided the students into two groups, Group A and Group B. Now, the thing is, they were given the same math test. Okay, there was nothing, different about this test. The only difference was Group A was told that the test is going to be really hard and challenging, and on the contrary, Group B was kind of told that the test is going to be very simple. And that basically means, See, as soon as you tell somebody that it is easy, it is manageable, it is doable, automatically your mentality shifts towards that. And even though the paper was identical, we saw that Group B students had a better score overall. क्योंकि Group B को क्या बताया गया था? That the test is easy, although the test was similar for both the parties, right? So what can be inferred from the experiment? The first thing that we are going to remove right away is this, because this is extreme. Students in Group B were naturally more intelligent. Do you see any evidence in the passage that establishes that they were naturally or inherently more intelligent? No. Then, students perform better when they believe a task is manageable. I think that is something which we can infer from this particular text, because just by telling Group B that it is going to be easy, they did understand that it is going to be something that they'll be able to do. तो वो doable था, manageable था, and that's the reason, that was the attitude they carried throughout the text, throughout the test. And if we talk about option C, Group A studied less than Group B, another piece of information which is not stated. And this is more of an assumption, not an inference. ठीक है? Math is an easy subject for everyone. And if that would have been the case, then the test would have been easy for every group. Group A, Group B, doesn't really matter. अगर math सभी के लिए easy होता, तो ये तो first of all, it's a generalization, right? We are generalizing it. Secondly, had that been the case, both the parties A and B, they would have scored good marks, right? The next one. Okay, let's discuss. So, as you can see, a new railway line also means new opportunities for the villagers. So, small villages who were earlier isolated suddenly became bustling trade centers. Why? Because connectivity brings business, connectivity brings monetary gains. And that's what we can see here. So, why did it become bustling trade centers? Because now people can travel to this place. And so we can see a growth in terms of shops, markets, schools appeared here, and more people actually began moving into the area. Automatically, if you provide people facilities, they would be more inclined to live there. So that's exactly what we can see happening here. What inference can be drawn from this passage? Railways encouraged development and growth in new areas. Absolutely right. People disliked living in villages before railways. Unsolicited view, something that we cannot find an evidence of. It was simply a matter of not being connected to the entire world. Railways just brought everybody closer to each other. But that does not mean that the people dislike living in village. People are still living in villages, right? So something which is not given. Schools only exist. First of all, the extreme word only. Schools only exist where railways are present. Just because railways brought more schools to the forefront does not mean कि schools वहीं होंगे जहाँ railways होंगे. ऐसे बहुत सारे villages हैं जहाँ पे schools हैं despite not having railway connectivity, right? So it is not a necessary condition. It is not an extreme thing to consider. Villages became crowded and unpleasant. So, although more people started moving into the area, the part where it became crowded and unpleasant is not stated. And how the people feel about it is not stated. Whether it has become more crowded, it hasn't really stated that it has also become unpleasant. Crowded to theek hai, फिर भी. So the correct answer is of course option A. So that brings me to the end of today's session. I intentionally picked simpler questions, but you do get the point, right? How to eliminate and how to incorporate the common traps wala thing, and also what exactly is an inference. So keep practicing, and I'll be meeting you soon. So happy learning. Bye bye.